Hi, everyone, and welcome to my technical interview workshop. My name is Andrew, and I'm here with the UVA Engineering Career Center. Let's get started. So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to start by introducing the technical interview, just go over the definitions and whatnot. Then we're going to go over some common misconceptions. Then we're going to talk about what you need to know coming into the interview, what you should be studying. Then I'm going to provide you some tips for success to keep in mind during the interview. Then we're going to go over a practice question together. And then I'll finish this workshop off by introducing some more resources that you may or may not know. So basically, technical interviews are used to assess your analytical skills, coding skills, and technical knowledge and CS fundamentals. You'll also get questions relating to your experience and culture fit, but they're more focused on your ability to solve the CS problem. So in terms of the coding format, I've seen it vary between very basic whiteboarding, pseudocode, or language agnostic, to maybe your language of preference. The most common languages are Python, Java, C++, but you're welcome to use whatever your language you feel you're most comfortable with. I've also seen, a hacker rank type problem where they give you an exam. It's pretty much an exam format beforehand, and it's just you and yourself solving a question on a web IDE. I would say the most common form of interviewing, or technical interviewing, is when you have to solve your problem in the language of your preference. So some common misconceptions that I've kind of heard and want to clarify are as follows. The first one is you can't mess up. I want to clarify this by saying, it's okay to mess up as long as you're strategizing, as long as you're, working systematically towards your goal. What I hear is not so great in terms of messing up is when you're making careless mistakes and, making very impulsive or erratic coding errors. But just in terms of not messing up, it's okay to, struggle a little bit, especially at the beginning while you're brainstorming. The second common misconception is that your code and scratch work has to be perfect. I don't believe this is the case, especially, at the beginning. It's okay to start off with a brute force solution, kind of starting off with the more basic data structures and stuff, and kind of improving once you have, a solid answer on paper first, before moving on to more complex algorithms. The third one is that you'll be graded on syntax and how fast you write your code. I believe that the opposite is the case, where if you are able to slowly explain and walk through your solution process, your brainstorming process with the interviewer, you'll actually be able to showcase more of your analytical side, instead of rushing through and writing your code really fast before the interviewer can understand really what's going on. And the last one is you must remember standard libraries and syntax. I believe that, at least for the most part, you'll be able to use Google, or at least ask if you can, if you're looking up some, very basic standard library or something. They're not expecting you to memorize everything that comes with your language of preference. So yeah, don't feel the need to have to come into an interview prepared to, just memorize everything about it. You're completely allowed to ask questions about very basic like syntax, stuff like that, and just being able to use Google basically. And so for what you need to know coming into the interview, this is kind of a comprehensive list. All of these topics are taken from Cracking the Coding interview. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But on the left-hand side, you'll see a list of data structures that are just important to know coming into an interview, because these are the kind of structures that you'll use to apply when solving the problems given. And you'll notice as you're working through more problems, which data structures you're more comfortable using, and more structures that you might need some help on. And I definitely recommend studying more and doing more problems on these structures that you might not know as well. For me, it's trees, but it could be different for everybody. So now with the middle column, or the algorithms that you're expected to know, these are more for, full-time positions or more technical companies that require you to do more in-depth coding. And that's why I made a note at the bottom that it can be different for every position. So I definitely study up on that before coming into the interview. But these are just some well-known algorithms that have been asked in previous technical interviews. Breadth first search, depth first search, binary search, merge sort, quick sort. You're not expected to code the entirety of one of these algorithms out, but just knowing the concepts to it is a really good way to prepare coming up to an interview. And in terms of the concepts on the right-hand side, some good topics to know are bit manipulation, memory, recursion, dynamic programming, and most importantly, big O, time and space. As long as you have a good idea of how to talk through and analyze your code, knowing not only how to solve the problem, but how your solution maybe compares to other solutions for the same problem. And so here are some tips for success, coming to keep in mind during the interview. So the first one is to make sure that you're clearly specify what you're thinking and planning. This is very important because a lot of times, at least I forget how to, talk through as I'm coding or thinking through my solution process for a problem, but an interviewer is not going to be able to, fully read your mind as you're thinking through. So I recommend practicing talking through and learning how to communicate as you're coding through problems. Second one is to ask questions to clarify the problem and specify constraints. Towards the beginning, as you're receiving the question for your coding interview, the interviewer may or may not stop to give you time to ask questions. Whether they do or not, it's a good idea to kind of ask some questions, at least to clarify what's going on, and even questions that aren't related to the solution process, but just making sure that the question they asked you is the same question you're trying to answer. I usually do around 2 or 3 of those, and you can come up with some of these questions beforehand as well. So the third tip for success is, don't write your code until you have a functional solution in your head. So basically what this means is kind of, you don't want to start coding blindly without knowing, exactly what that method or that, loop, that condition is going to do. It's good to keep in mind to prevent careless errors, impulsive behaviors, and just kind of show your how well you are thinking through the problem, your analytical skills. And the next bullet down, as you write your code, talk through your thought process and kind of mention any assumptions you make. And this is kind of being able to use certain standard libraries, assuming that standard library is not going to completely solve the problem. It's a good idea to, just ask and just make sure that you're allowed to use, this data structure, or Python has so many different, standard libraries that you can go and implement and do cool stuff with, but just mention all the, packages and stuff you're using and just see if that's okay. We'll just show how, you're not rushing through to solve the problem, but you're making sure that your solution process is, just as good as the end result. And the last tip for success is, to ask for feedback throughout the process. And this is good to keep in mind, especially when you're talking to maybe interviewer that might not be as communicative. And so this is just kind of asking questions like, what do you think about this? Or using this data structure to solve this problem, or just keeping the interviewer engaged with your process. I wouldn't ask anything, personal, but, maybe just feedback on how you are working through your problem. it gives you a good idea of, what they think potentially, and, hopefully maybe some advice that you can use to continue to solve the problem. And so now we're going to do a nice practice question. Let's begin. So for this practice question, I'm going to be using the Collab Edit website. It's a great code share, basically like a Google Doc that allows 2 or 3 multiple people to collaborate on the same document and kind of have it in a nice fancier code format. Unfortunately, this platform does not add the compiling feature, but I think it's a great resource if you did want to conduct your own mock interviews with your friends. So today we'll be coding in Java, and our practice question reads, given an array of integers nums and an integer target, return indices of the 2 numbers such that they add up to the target. And so basically what I recommend starting off with is just asking some clarifying questions to kind of get the ball rolling and understand the problem further. A good question is, am I ever going to have an array of integers less than 2? So basically there would be no solution. And if so, what would I do in that situation? And basically, some more edge cases would be, what if I had, 2 or more solutions? Which solution should I put? Or even just having a question, can you give me an example of this problem? So an example for this problem would look like this, where if you have nums with values 2, 7, 11, 15, and a target value of 9, the output is going to be an array with values 0 and 1, because the indices 0 and 1 have values 2 and 7 that add up to the target value of 9. And so after asking enough questions and understanding basically the basic inputs and outputs, you want to start writing your code. For the sake of time, I went ahead and copied and pasted my solution from earlier. And so basically the biggest things to understand from this is to realize that this is the return type and it's an integer array. You also have an integer array input called nums and an integer target. And so as you kind of code through and get to a solution, I want you to keep in mind that it's okay to start off with a more basic solution. And so the direction I'm going to go is probably a nested for loop that checks through every possible value and seeing which 2 values add up to the target. So basically, I just did 2 for loops, one starting at the beginning of the list, the other one starting at the index after the first for loops index, and iterating through and checking every possible, pair from the input nums and seeing if there's any that add up to the target. And so once you get to kind of your first solution, the interviewer is probably going to ask you to walk through your code and kind of walk through line by line what's happening and what's being plugged in and what's being done to get you to your solution. And so basically, you're going to have to walk through your for loops and what your conditional is used for and how your return type will get you to the correct solution. And then you're going to have to walk through your big O time and space complexity. And basically, it's used to analyze how efficient your solution is in terms of space and time. And in terms of time complexity, it'll be big O of n squared because it uses 2 for loops and it iterates through nums twice. The space complexity is actually going to be constant because there is no variables or data structures that I initiated that is dependent on the size of the input. And so I can say that it's constant. I might make a note that if you do have, you do end up finishing with enough time, the interviewer may ask you a more complicated question or ask you more ways to maybe enhance or make your code more efficient in terms of time or space complexity. Um, yeah, but in a nutshell, this is basically what goes on in a technical interview with a very generic problem I grabbed from LeetCode. I hope you enjoyed. Let's get back to the slides. Now that we finished with the practice question, I'm gonna give you guys some more resources that I've used to study for my technical interviews. First one on the list is Cracking the Coding Interview. This is basically a very nice comprehensive book on all the topics and how the interview is going to go and like what to prepare beforehand. I definitely recommend it. It's a very good read. And so the second one is LeetCode. This is a really great platform for you to practice interview questions. They range from easy to hard, as well as offering discussion boards, solutions to some of the problems, as well as just an overall comprehensive database of interview questions that I've found very helpful. And so the third one down is Glassdoor. I've used this website a lot. It's crowdsourced, so basically people post reviews on their interviews, their internships, their full-time positions, as well as their salary. And this is kind of one step I use in researching company-specific positions and just getting to know more about interviews as well as the positions that I'm applying for. The next one on the list is Handshake Company Events, and I highly recommend this just to show your interest in some of the companies that you all have applied for, and also being able to meet the recruiters and learning a lot about what they have to teach, whether they do resume marathons, they do also more technical interviewing workshops as well as other interviewing workshops. And it's just a really good way to just get to meet the recruiters and learn more about their company. The next one on the list is Career Shift, and this is basically a database of the top employers that come to UVA. And it's a good way to basically network and just meet alumni, recruiters that put out their contact information for you to reach out and network with. So the last thing on the list is Skilled Inc. And basically this is a mock interviewing platform that allows you to connect with someone that's been in the industry, and then they'll conduct a mock interview and go through everything, the entire process basically, and they'll offer you feedback and a review on how you did and how you can improve in the future. I found this super helpful. And if you want to learn more about that, UVA does offer tokens from the Engineering Career Center. And thank you for listening to my technical interviewing workshop. I hope you learned some things, and good luck, everybody.